if you've been following us for any length of time, you know that councils bore the brunt of austerity. They bore the brunt of it. Their budgets of not only just being, shaved right down to the bone, they've gone into the bone and had to, take out the marrow in many cases. There are just no room whatsoever to make the kind of cuts that reform would like to make. That is the straight, honest truth. And I've said this before. I cannot wait. I cannot wait until we get to next year and we actually start to see them make budgets, come up with that stuff. Because at the moment, if you've seen a lot of these reform councillors, like posting out video clips of them in the council chambers, like saying any good news they possibly can, which, bear in mind, isn't even them like taking of stuff they've done. It is them taking responsibility and claiming the achievements of the councillors they have just replaced. So if you do see any of your like local reform council saying, "Oh, look, we did this, only so many weeks in, we've done this," that wasn't even their achievement. That was the last council's achievement. Remember, they've got no policy. They've got no idea what they are doing. They are paralyzing councils. Some aren't even turning up in this. The attendance rating of some of these councillors just is non-existent. This paralyzes councils. And even though it might sound like a good thing that they are doing nothing, in reality, it is very bad. Because that means then your council is then directionless. It means the people below them can't make decisions because they have to make it based on the policy that comes from those councillors. We've got no policy. What are these council workers meant to do? But it gets even worse because we know that they are going to cut, as they say, waste. They are going to look at the council finances and try and shave as much, again, waste as they can, because next year they want to try and lower council tax. Now, if you lower council tax in a lot of these areas, you're going to have significant problems. A lot of councils are going to be in significant financial trouble, especially a lot of these reform ones, because some of them are not in that, good financial position. Some are barely scraping by. Kent is a good example. But we've got a perfect example of where you have an opposition councillor in Worcester who is very, very worried about what is about to be cut. And this could mean, as he's about to say, road safety. And this all comes back to the main things we've been talking about, that they don't have a single policy. And because they've got no policy, this affects so much areas. For example, road safety. Who knew that maybe having a policy about, road safety in your area would be like so critical, but not these guys, apparently. So before we get on into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Of course, there's a link to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on then into this then, shall we? This comes from Worcester News. The title of Road Safety Could Now Get Even Worse Under Reform Leadership. So road safety could get now even worse under the county council's new administration, a Malvern councillor has now claimed. Chris McSweeny said that cutting budgets could have now a devastating impact on Worcestershire families. The council deputy leader, David Tyler, dismissed his comments now as scaremongering and unhelpful. Reform UK's Joe Monk was elected leader of Worcester County Council just last month and has immediately urged by Police and Crime Commissioner John Champion to now help reduce the number of deaths on the county's roads. However, Councillor Monk has now said that her first priority will be to sort out the council's finances. Claire McSweeny, who took the Malvern Link seat from the Lib Dems back in May's election, said, "Let's be clear what that really means." cutting corners on safety and cutting back on experts, and cutting the lifeline that keeps families now safe on the road. When a child is killed on the road, it is no accident. It is now the direct result of public policy, or lack thereof it. So Malvern, of course, witnessed now a number of very serious car crashes, and calls have now been made to improve the road safety in and around the town. A crash on Graham Road back in February, which left a woman now fighting for her life, remains currently under investigation 4 months later. A 65-year-old man died following a crash in the Malvern Hills back in May. In Worcester, we have seen this tragedy time and time again, said Councillor McSweeny. Promises to make roads safer have been made and then been ignored. Parish councils have now been begging for speed enforcement vans, only to be fobbed off. Deaths have risen, but action only comes when votes are on the line. This only looks now to get worse under reform. This is now the real cost of the so-called savings. Funerals, lifelong injuries, shattered families. Cutting the budget doesn't save money. It just shifts the burden onto people who will now suffer the consequences. The price of action, the more speed cameras, updated policies, proper enforcement is nothing now compared to the devastation of doing nothing. Councillor Tyler said, this is now yet another example of scaremongering and just pure speculation. So let's be clear, there is no basis now for these unhelpful comments. But you're the one who has come into power saying you are going to cut budgets. You are going to look to make budget cuts. This is one area where, even under the past administration, they are saying, look, there's all these problems, an issue of road safety. Why haven't you got any policy to do this? You are doing nothing. If you are meant to be claiming, as these reform councillors often say, that we are going to be solving people's priorities, I would say that if you've got right there a very serious issue of like road safety in that area, maybe you should be doing something about it as a councillor. Maybe, I don't know, a policy on road safety to be able to do that. But they've got nothing. They've got nothing. And of course, he just goes, oh, but we've just come into power and we need time to get into the detail of each area of the council. Yeah, maybe you should have done the research beforehand. Ask questions that may not have been asked now for years. Like what? What questions are you not asking or have not been asked for years? And then try and work with teams to deliver affordable changes before we are able to make promises on what we will deliver. That is why you have policy. You've just come in and said, we're going to be great. We're going to get rid of all this quote waste here, and we're going to be solving people's priorities. But when someone in this case brings up to you a serious issue of the fact that, hey, road safety in this area is like really bad, we need to be doing something about it, you're like, oh, we can't do this yet. Can't do a thing about this yet. We've only just come into power. You know, we're just asking questions that may have not been asked for years. Like what? What questions have they not been asking for years in this case? It's honestly ridiculous. But I want to see what some of the comments are on this. Someone said here, I'm sure, of course, we're all looking forward to reform, delivering on a few manifesto commitments they actually did make, sacking the DEI staff, getting rid of the low traffic neighborhoods that, of course, don't exist, stopping working from home by getting council staff back into City Hall whilst their own staff work from home. Not, of course, flying the Worcestershire or even regimental flags because they're not patriotic enough. It's all ridiculous on this. Let's see what we've got on this. I love the fact that someone has used the quote um, around, yeah, next time your kid goes out on the street, ask them to beware when crossing the road of public policy. This guy doesn't even get it, calls this scaremongering um, over this. And then someone brings up the fact, look what happened in Wales. They made the road safer by adopting 20-mile-an-hour speed limits for urban streets. you know, shocking, shocking when you can do things like that when it comes to policy. When you can do things like that. Any more good ones on this? Someone saying that a speed limit is actually a ban on cars. It's insane. Yep, someone calling out again. Does anyone actually have any policies on the council? Again, it doesn't. Um, yep, just a yeah, a lot of pro-reform supporters in here trying to have a good circle jerk on each other on this, ignoring the fact that their guys are now in charge, and maybe they're responsible for now trying to solve that problem. Will the county's roads get better under this reform administration? I don't think so, especially when they are constantly talking about making cuts. They're going to cut road safety. They're going to cut enforcement on this stuff. And guess where this stuff comes from? Local council politics. So if you're in Worcester, drive safely, because reform ain't going to do anything to help that situation there by the looks of it, especially when they've got no policy to be able to do it. When they're just taking their time to come up with policy, even though they should have already had it in place when they were being elected. That's what a whole that's what a whole election thing is for. When you say, hey, we want to be elected and this is the stuff we're going to do, not just coming up with it on the fly. Anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry if you live in Worcester. Things are probably about to get a bit worse for you in that area. But of course, as always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.